Hey everybody, what's going on? It is James here with Crypto Common Sense, aka Three Peaks Trading. And in this video, we're going to look more at trading and math and numbers. And I want to open your eyes to more blind spots that you may or may not have. So when we talk about charts, one thing that I see with a lot of folks is they look at a chart in absolute terms. And what I mean by that is, let's say that I pull up a chart like Ethereum. And if we're looking at this chart, somebody will look at this chart who perhaps bought back here, got caught in the FOMO, rode this down, and then got excited when it came back up here, and maybe they're even still holding it. And of course, in absolute terms, it's very easy to say, well, yeah, if I bought here and I'm holding it, I'm down 36%. But in real life terms, you're not down 36%. You're down more than that, because there's two costs or two hidden costs that a lot of people forget about. The first hidden cost, of course, is inflation. And so when your Ethereum in this example was worth $4,600 back in 2021, that $4,600 bought more goods and services than $4,600 buys today. And one of the clearest and easiest examples I can show you of this is I can show you a gold chart. And of course, if we look at a gold chart, we can see that back into the 1980s, gold topped at around $600 to $700 per ounce. And today, of course, it's over $4,000 an ounce. So it's like, wow, what an amazing return gold provided for gold bucks. But in reality, that's not true at all. In reality, gold topped, when adjusted for inflation, at roughly $2,600 an ounce back in the 80s, and it didn't get back to that level until 2011. So essentially, gold bugs had to ride a drawdown for 30 years. But even then, they didn't break even. In fact, right now at $4,000 an ounce, people who bought the top in 1980 and held, they're not actually in the green. And that brings me to the second hidden cost that many people forget about, and that's opportunity costs. Let's say that back in 1980, somebody put money into U.S. Treasuries. The average return of a U.S. Treasury is actually close to 5%. It's actually between 5 and 6%. We'll use the lower of those two numbers, so 5%. So let's say that back at the peak in 1980, I cashed my gold out. I got $633 an ounce, and I invested that into treasuries at an average return of 5% per year. So if we take 1.05 and we put a little caret over by it, and we say, how many years has it been? It's been 45 years. So 45 to the power of 45 times 633, the money that I would have cashed out in 1980 at the top, just sitting in treasuries, would be worth roughly $5,687 today. And again, I'm using a conservative 5% return when the average return is actually a little bit higher than that. So gold today would need to be roughly $5,700 an ounce to provide the same return that these treasuries would have provided. And that's really critical to understand, because the other day I did a video, for example, and I was showing how if you invested at the peak of the dot-com bubble, your average annual growth was about 7% or so. Whereas if you invested at the bottom after the dot-com bubble, your average return was closer to 15%. But the other thing that didn't figure in was the opportunity cost. In other words, how much could you have made sitting in treasuries over those 2 years that you then would have had extra money to invest at the bottom? The reality is this: when you're looking at life, whether it's financial decisions or whether it's other decisions, work-related, family-related, relationships, it doesn't matter. Everything in life is some sort of trade-off. There's an opportunity cost to every single decision you make in life. For example, when you find somebody and you fall in love and you decide to get married, there's an opportunity cost. Marrying that person takes you off of the market, or it should, in theory. And that means that you're foregoing all of the other possible partners in your future. When you decide to marry someone and have children with that person, that means that there's all these other endless possibilities of children, genetic combinations of you and other people. Those children will never come to exist because you chose this person instead. When you choose to take a specific job, that means you're taking an opportunity cost of all the other jobs you didn't take. If you choose a career path and you go to college for, a specific degree, there's opportunity costs in all the degrees that you didn't take. Everything in life has a cost. We just don't actively realize it. Most of the decisions that we make, they're actually subconscious. We don't realize we're making the decisions. A lot of our behavior is actually automatic behavior. For example, if you have a morning routine, you get up every day, you probably follow a very specific, very similar routine. You probably take a shower at about the same time each day. You probably brush your teeth at about the same time. You probably have a habit of maybe using the restroom when you first get up. Or maybe, unfortunately, the first thing you do is you grab your phone and look at social media. Whatever it is, it's unlikely that, let's say you're a phone addict, it's unlikely that you wake up and you go through an actual conscious process of deciding, I'm going to pick my phone up, I'm going to open Facebook, I'm going to scroll through Facebook, yada, yada. It's all automatic behavior. It's subconscious. And with trading, so much of it's the same thing. You automatically assume, well, if I bought here and it eventually got back to here, then I'm at least even. But you're not. This is not the break-even point. This is the break-even point versus absolute dollars. But it's not the break-even point in purchasing power, because $1 in 2000 was worth a lot more than $1 in 2015. So for example, $1 back in 2000 was worth roughly $1.38 in 2015. So if the high back here was around $100, then it really needed to move up to about $138 to actually be even, which was actually way up here, which it didn't do until 2017. And of course, by then there was more inflation, so it actually had to move a little higher. It was probably realistically more like late 2017 or even 2018 before the QQQ was worth what it was worth back here. And again, that's discounting the returns that you could have got in a treasury. So the peak back here is 102.04. So let's say treasuries are 5%, let's say a 25-year route. So essentially at 345 in 2025, you'd be roughly break even with somebody who cashed out the top and put their money in treasuries, roughly break even. Now that's probably very shocking to you because it seems like you'd be way up, but you wouldn't be. You'd still be up if you bought here versus just sitting in treasuries, but by a lot less than what you probably anticipated. The other thing I want to talk about in this video is something that is very alarming, and I've talked about it in past videos, but I want to bring it up again. You really want to pay attention to the Magnificent Seven right now because it makes up something like 40 to 45% of the QQQ, which means that the QQQ is now essentially a bet on AI. And it also makes up a very large portion of the SPY. Because so much of the market is concentrated in this handful of stocks, that's what makes the market so susceptible to a market crash. Because once those stocks, if those stocks start to unwind, the rest of the market is going to very quickly follow suit. And one of the myths that keeps getting passed around with AI is how AI is going to make these companies so much more productive that their stock prices are going to soar. But I want you to stop and think about this. The expectation is AI is going to replace workers, which lowers the cost of production, increasing a company's profits. Very few people are stopping to think this through. If you fire your workforce, the middle class shrinks. The middle class are the ones buying the goods and services. So if you don't have anyone to buy the goods and services, your company value will decrease, not increase. It doesn't matter how cheap Walmart can acquire a pair of shoes if nobody is buying a pair of shoes. And I'm using Walmart as an example, but of course, I don't think they're heavily invested in the AI game. But a lot of companies are. They're betting on AI, forgetting that when they lay off all their workers, there's nobody to spend money. We have a symbiotic relationship in capitalism. You have to have people making a decent living so that they can spend money, which is what increases and fuels the GDP. If we take a look at the Magnificent Seven, which is essentially what you're looking at in this chart, that's just those 7 stocks added up and then divided by 7 to get an average price, we can see this looks very much like a bubble chart. And if we do one more thing and we say, well, let's take a look and see how that looks versus the QQQ, what we're seeing is that the Magnificent Seven, which makes up 40 to 45% of the QQQ, just put in a potential lower high in relative strength when it's putting in a higher high versus US dollars. And if you all remember, we've seen this type of behavior before. In November of 2021, I did the exact same exercise with Bitcoin versus the US 100, which again is basically the futures of the QQQ. And while versus the US dollar, Bitcoin had just made a higher high, it had just made a lower high versus tech stocks, which I viewed as complacency. And of course, I was proven right in time. That did end up being the exact complacency balance. This is that exact same chart. So we had euphoria, we had complacency, and then the bear market kicked off in full swing. Now we're seeing something very similar with the Mag 7. So just recall that holding an asset and riding it sideways or riding it down, if you'd like to do that, that's certainly your choice to do so. Just make sure that you're figuring in all of the costs associated. How much is it going to cost you in inflation? How much is it going to cost you an opportunity cost because you're not sitting in something safer that could be producing a return for you versus suffering through a drawdown? I'm not encouraging you to buy or sell any asset. I'm encouraging you to educate yourself to all the costs associated. As the old saying goes, you can't win a game if you don't understand the rules. Do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button now. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Leave me a comment. Let me know if you have any questions or what other types of videos you'd like to see in the future. And as always, please remember that I am some guy sitting in a spare bedroom, which means that nothing in this video is financial advice. You should always go out and do your own due diligence and seek out professional financial advice from a licensed financial advisor for making any type of investment in cryptocurrency, the stock market, precious metals, Forex, or any other tradable asset. Thanks for watching. And as always, please remember to trade safe.